You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. I am your host, Walt White, and this is precisely the part of the podcast where I fall flat on my face and have no idea where to go. I'm not very good with segues, and even after 23 episodes, I still haven't gotten the hang of transitioning from that basic intro, show after show after show, into something witty about the show, or just something we're going to talk about. It feels very difficult and awkward, and when I try to do something clever, I usually wind up re-recording the introduction 3 or 4, sometimes 5 times, until I finally get frustrated enough with it to just toss it and start from scratch and just not worry about that awkward introduction. And that's pretty much where we're at here. I'm not really going to worry about this awkward introduction. We're just going to do it once and be done with it. And that is your transition into the start of the podcast. Clever, right? Not really. But at any rate, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the Gun Rights Radio Network. Last week, I had mentioned that it was my first show on the Gun Rights Radio Network. And along with the additional promotion that you get from the network, you also get this shiny new section of the Gun Rights Radio Network forum all to yourself. It's dedicated to your show, and it's kind of like your little inner sanctum to do with what you want. It's a place where people can talk about the previous episodes, a place where people can find episodes, ask you questions directly, a place where listeners can converse back and forth. It's a really nice, convenient thing to have. And on that Shooting the Breeze section of the Gun Rights Radio Network forum, I got some fantastic, warm welcome and great feedback, and it really put a smile on my face. It actually made my weekend. I was really happy to see it. I was a little concerned at first. I had a couple of reservations. I wasn't quite sure how the audience was going to take the show, because the Gun Rights Radio Network, judging by the word radio in the name of the network, it deals primarily with audio stuff. And being that this is a video podcast first and an audio podcast second, I was a little concerned about the awkward pauses where I stop and take a puff of my cigar. And on the video you can see me do that, but audio, you just hear this long awkward silence. And I wasn't quite sure how that silence that I just left in there on purpose was going to be taken by the listeners. So I had little concerns here and there, but overall it's been pretty good. Personally, I think video is just a little easier to do. I mean, you're looking at me, you see me waving my hands, talking with my hands, you see the cigar moving around, you see my my joys of working from home poster behind me. There's visual distraction, so you don't really take notice of the exhaust fan running up behind the camera, sucking my cigar smoke and blowing it outside. Or you don't hear the little space heater I got in the corner that's keeping this room in the unfinished basement comfortable. It's those types of things that you don't notice video-wise, but when you're sitting and listening to the podcast in the car, you can pick up those little cues, and they become very apparent. And I just pointed them both out to you, so now I'm going to have people really annoyed by the sounds. But at any rate, the welcome has been really warm. I've been really happy with the way things have been going. In addition to the very warm welcome and great stuff on the Gun Rights Radio Network, I've also been incorporated into the Gun Rights Radio Network Stitcher. I don't even know what you would call it, Stitcher bundle, maybe, which is a group of podcasts that are on Stitcher Radio. If you're familiar with, or if you're not familiar with Stitcher, basically it is, it's a service that allows you to stream audio podcasts through your mobile device, and it allows you to do so using small amounts of bandwidth from what I understand. So if you're not in a really strong 3G area or a 4G area, Stitcher makes it a little easier to listen to a given podcast. It doesn't break it up so much with buffering and things. And it's a nice convenient way to put everything into one app. So being a part of the Gun Rights Radio Network, I've been folded into the Stitcher network that Gun Rights Radio has set up, Mark has set up for it. So if you're interested in listening to my podcast or any of the podcasts on the Gun Rights Radio Network on your smartphone, I would suggest checking out Stitcher Radio and giving it a try. I would tell you all about it and how cool it is, but I haven't gotten a chance to install it on my Android phone just yet. I'm going to make an attempt to do that this week, and maybe we'll talk about that next week. I had a little trip in my mind. I was thinking ahead and I forgot to keep talking, so it was kind of awkward, and it was. But at any rate, that's where we're at with the show. In terms of this particular show, I have a lot of news, a lot of older news. As I mentioned in the last show, there was just an abundance of news over the holiday break. Some of it was really great stuff, and when I packed out last week's show notes, I took a bunch of extra stuff and put it in the show notes for this week, a full week ahead of time, which I never do. But I thought it was interesting stuff, and I wanted to talk about it. Well, I'm at a point now where I've got 4 pieces of news, and I don't really want to get rid of any of them. So we may do 4 pieces of news this show. Maybe I can make up for it and just do 2 pieces of featured content, but I've got 3 lined up. Or you can just listen to me babble for over an hour, which is a good possibility. So I guess we'll just kind of go with the flow. We'll roll into the news now, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe I do 3, maybe I do 4. Who knows? In the first piece of news this week, I have something that has a great potential to snowball. It was a story that came out around Christmas time, and since this story came out, there was another one that came out, very similar, different circumstances, similar circumstances, very similar result, and just as sad. And then, since then, I've read another article, so I don't want to batter you with 3 pieces of news that look at very similar situations. So I'm just going to go with the first one that I put in the show notes, which is Tennessee tourist arrested for bringing pistol into 911 memorial. 911 being the 9/11 memorial. And this comes from the New York Post. This was published on December 29th, and it goes on to say, "Really, you can't bring guns into the 9/11 memorial. A tourist from Tennessee waltzed into one of the most secure sites in the city and politely asked the cop if she could check her weapon. Instead, she was dragged out in cuffs. Now, Meredith Graves, 39, is facing at least 3 years in prison for thinking New York's gun laws are anything like those in the Bible Belt. Graves, a 4th-year medical student, showed up at the memorial on December 22nd to pay her respects during a trip north for a job interview. She didn't realize that the loaded .32 caliber pistol in her purse would be a problem until she saw a sign at the site that read, 'No guns allowed,' sources said. She remembered she had the gun on her, a source said. She walked up to a security guard and said, 'I have this gun, where can I check it?' The guard told her that she was in luck because of the law enforcement day and led her to another area. When she got to that section, she asked another cop, 'We have this gun, can we check it in here? We, my husband and I, are not law enforcement.' That's when she was arrested. Graves, who has a full legal carry permit in Tennessee, was locked up on a weapons possession charge and held on a $2,000 bond that she posted yesterday. She is due in court on March 19th, yesterday being December 28th. She'll soon find out exactly how serious New York City is about illegal guns. The Manhattan DA's office is pursuing a conviction on felony gun possession, carrying a minimum sentence of 3.5 years. Mayor Bloomberg, with the help of the 5 district attorneys, has crusaded against the flow of illegal guns, especially from the South. Out-of-state weapons have been used in a slew of homicides, including the murder of NYPD cop Peter Fagoski on December 12th. Sources don't believe Graves' intentions were sinister. She and her husband, Richard Disharoon, drove to New York because Graves, a registered nurse, had an interview for a residency at a Brookhaven Memorial Hospital on Long Island, sources said. You'd think states would reciprocate with the Second Amendment. She has a license to carry in Tennessee, said her mother-in-law, who lives in Manchester, New Jersey. Everyone down there carries, and she just forgot, said the woman, who would not give her name. She was being honest, and this is the treatment they give innocent people. Graves, who has no prior criminal record, could not be reached for comment, and her legal aid lawyer did not return calls. The case resembles the ordeal of Jonathan Ryan, a Florida man who was arrested for gun possession in 2010 after driving up north to help his girlfriend move, and ended up beating the rap at trial. Ryan's lawyer, Mark Betterow, said yesterday New York gun laws are too tough on people like Graves and his client. There may be technical guilt in some of these cases, but the law is not designed to deal with them, he said. Meanwhile, a loaded .38 caliber handgun was discovered Tuesday on the ground near the metal detectors at the memorial, sources said. So, here you have a case where this woman from Tennessee, it's kind of arguable whether or not she was kind of in the wrong here. I mean, she definitely was. She should have researched gun laws in New York before leaving her state and checked to make sure that there was reciprocity between Tennessee and New York, which there is not. But she goes to New York for a job interview. She, I would assume she carries on a daily basis. It's quite simple to slip a little pocket pistol, a .32 caliber pocket pistol in her pocket and forget about it. She goes up to New York, she sees a sign, and she does what honest people do. Oh, okay, I can't have a gun here. Maybe I can go check it, just like down at home. And sure enough, she was arrested. Well, shortly after this happened, there was another incident where a guy came up north. I don't remember what state he was from, but he was visiting the Empire State Building. Very similar situation. He walks up to security and says, where can I check my gun? And he's dragged out in handcuffs. He's a Marine, and he's arrested. And it's just amazing that that honest people who are trying to do the right thing, quote there, are being charged with are facing a charge that deals with a 3.5-year minimum mandatory sentence. So it's insane to think that someone that made a simple mistake is going to be put away for 3.5 years. Now, I read something about the Marine that said that even if the judge would grant leniency or something, it would not get below 2 years or something like that. I'm not quite sure how you get less than the minimum sentence, but it's a nasty situation. After reading these two news articles, there was another one in a New York paper it was an opinion piece. And the guy was saying that, in New York we have these really tough gun laws, and what these people did were definitely breaking the law. However, our tough gun laws aren't meant to deal with people like this. You've got people that made an honest mistake are now facing 3.5 years in prison. And he was of the mindset that I was. In a case like this, you should probably get a fine and serve no jail time whatsoever. Same thing for the Marine. Honest mistake, he still broke the law. Slap on the wrist, fine, and you're good to go, I would think, in my opinion anyway. But to make things, he was on the anti-gun side, and to churn things up a bit, he was saying that if the city of New York didn't do something about this, it would give them a black eye, and the federal government was going to come in. And this is a prime example of why H.R. 822, the National Reciprocity Bill, needs to be put into effect. And this is going to be the poster case, or the poster case for the issue. And this is the type of thing that's going to get it passed. So if we don't want national reciprocity, we need to give these people leniency, because our tough gun laws aren't meant to deal with people like them. It's the thugs and gangbangers in the city that it's meant to deal with. And it was kind of aggravating to read something like that. So he only wants to grant these people leniency because it may lead to national reciprocity coming through. So kind of aggravating in the grand scheme of things, but you've got two people that that made an honest mistake, and they're looking at potentially 3.5 years mandatory minimum sentence in prison for taking a gun into New York City that wasn't registered. And you know what? I really don't know if national reciprocity is going to do much good, because you still need to abide by the laws of the state that you're going to. So in the case of like New Jersey, I could carry my gun into New Jersey. However, I couldn't have a magazine with more than 10 round capacity, and I couldn't bring hollow point bullets in because they're illegal there. So there are things that you still need to be aware of, even if national reciprocity goes into effect. There are a handful of things that you still need to be aware of depending on where you're going. So there is news item number 1. Really sad case for both of these individuals. For the second piece of news, I have something that should be a little bit shorter than that first piece, but this one, if there was a gun topic full of a facepalm moment, this one would be it. This comes from the WyomingNews.com, and it's Wyoming Tribune Eagle. It was published on, let's see a published date. Looks like early January, I'm guessing. But anyway, it goes on. The article's entitled "Gun Goes Off in Starbucks." And it says, Cheyenne. A 17-year-old Cheyenne teen was cited Monday after she dropped her purse, causing the gun she was carrying in it to go off in a local coffee shop. After the round fired, the girl said, "I think my purse went off." According to the Cheyenne police report about the incident, the girl, whose name is being withheld because she is a juvenile, dropped her purse around 6:45 a.m. Monday while she was at the cash register at Starbucks. 2 Cheyenne police officers were in the coffee shop at the time. Once they heard the gunshot, they drew their pistols and scanned the shop. The officers approached the teen and searched her purse, which had a large hole in it. They found a double-barrel .38 Special Derringer pistol in the girl's purse. The top barrel had been fired. According to the report, the bullet missed John Basil, 43, by about 12 inches. After nearly missing Basil's head, the bullet hit the west wall of the store, bounced back to the east, and rolled under the coffee counter. The officers had the teen call her parents, who responded to Starbucks shortly after the incident. The girl's father said he had given the teen the pistol and encouraged her to carry it while traveling for her protection. The girl said she keeps the gun in her room and had it with her because she was going to visit friends in Laramie. She said she has never taken a hunter safety class or any kind of formal firearms training. The teen's mother told police that she doesn't particularly like the firearm because they, quote, may just go off, unquote, or end quote. I always get that jumbled. But anyway, she said that she knew her daughter had a pistol and encouraged her to point it at the bad person if she was ever in trouble. The gun was returned to the teen's parents. The girl was issued a city summons for possession of firearm by a juvenile, which carries a $750 bond, and it must appear in court stipulation. City ordinance stipulates that individuals must be 18-year-olds to carry any type of firearm within city limits. Wyoming state statutes state that a person must be 21 years old to carry a concealed weapon. According to federal law, individuals must be 21 years old to buy a pistol and 18 to buy a rifle or shotgun. So this thing is just full of fail. It's incredible. The mother is concerned that the gun is just going to go off. Now, normally, we would just sit back and kind of snicker at that a little bit. Guns don't just go off. They require interaction. They have safety measures in place. A gun sitting on a table just does not go off. And in most cases, new production guns, even if they're dropped, they don't go off. They have internal safety mechanisms that prevent the firing pin from hitting the primer or the striker, for that matter, from hitting the primer and making the gun go off. So when we hear people say, "Oh, the gun might just go off," it's not something we worry about. However, when you've got an old Derringer that doesn't have a trigger guard, and apparently she's carrying this thing cocked and locked in her purse, she drops it, something catches the trigger, the thing goes off, blows a giant hole in her purse. It could have hit a nearby patron of the store. Things could have been really, really bad. She was fortunate that no one was hurt, and that she only got a $750 fine and a summons to appear in court. It seems as though well, obviously it says right here, I didn't notice that, but she's 17 years old. I would think that there are better things to give a 17-year-old that doesn't have any training or have any experience with guns whatsoever, or formal experience with guns whatsoever. Pepper spray is a great alternative, I would think. I mean, I'm not advocating that 17-year-olds aren't responsible and things, but in this case, I don't think she was responsible enough to be carrying this gun to begin with. And shame on the father for just handing over a 38 Special Derringer with no instructions or anything like that. Maybe she was supposed to just keep her in a room, but that's kind of beside the point. I think this is definitely one of those facepalm moments where there's just a whole lot of fail in this article, and this whole situation could have been far, far worse than it was. For the third piece of news, I have something that comes from Cleveland.com, and it is entitled, "Two Arrested in Akron Robbery of Man Trying to Sell Xbox on Craigslist." This was published on December 28th. Again, this is older stuff that I came across during the Christmas break that I thought was interesting enough to push forward into future show notes. Future show notes being the next show, this one. And the news article goes on to say, Akron, Ohio. An Akron man was robbed Tuesday night by three men who went to his Triplet Boulevard home to buy an Xbox video game system that he had advertised on Craigslist. Akron police said one man went to the victim's house and looked at the gaming system around 6 p.m. He then called a friend to bring him money to buy the game. Within minutes, two armed men broke into the house and robbed the victim of $85. During the robbery, the victim pulled out his own handgun and fired several shots at the suspects, who ran out of the house and drove off in a car. Around 7 p.m., police got a call from Barberton Citizens Hospital about a man being treated for a gunshot wound to his elbow. Police interviewed the victim and arrested him and his companion as suspects in the earlier robbery. Jeremy Culver, 18, of Fairlawn, and Sean Davis, 20, of Akron, were charged with aggravated robbery. Culver was also charged with possession of a counterfeit controlled substance after police found a fake rock of crack cocaine in his pocket. Both were booked into Summit County Jail. The third suspect has not been identified or located. So, this kind of stirs up some uneasy feelings that I have about Craigslist. I have all kinds of stuff that I get sick of seeing, and I want to get rid of it, but at the same time I don't want to be hassled with selling it on eBay, and I don't want people coming to my house through Craigslist. So a lot of times if I can't find someone that will kind of buy it face to face, or if I don't know someone that is interested in it, a lot of times I just chuck that stuff, because I'm not real crazy about putting it out on Craigslist, and for one, being pestered via telephone calls or email. And this is a prime example of something bad that could happen. You get someone that comes to your house to look at something that you're trying to sell, and the whole situation of him calling a buddy to bring money seems kind of shady to me. I mean, I would be I don't know that I would feel completely comfortable going to a stranger's house to look at an item. I mean, I've done it before. There's some mild discomfort there. But I don't know that I would go to the extent of going there without any cash and then having to call my friend to tell him to bring money. I mean, in that case, I would bring the friend along so that there were two of us, and the likelihood of something happening is perhaps lessened. So this guy comes in, he looks at the system, calls up his buddy, he says, okay, I want to buy it, bring the money, and three people barge into the guy's house and rob him. And ultimately, I may sound, harsh and mean or cold-hearted and all that, but I really wish this guy had been a better shot and clipped him in more than just the elbow. But great example of, if you ever have anyone you don't know coming to your house, it is a great reason to carry. 9 times out of 10, if I'm walking around, if I've gotten a shower and I'm dressed for the day, more often than not, I have a gun on me somehow. Either I have a Springfield XD on my hip because I'm planning on going out somewhere that I'm not particularly concerned about people seeing my gun, and if I'm going somewhere where guns are kind of frowned upon, or I don't really just feel like dealing with any sort of hassle, I usually slip a Smith & Wesson Bodyguard in my pocket. So in either situation, I've got a gun on me. When I have someone coming to the house, like I recently had the water company come out and put in a new electronic meter because I wasn't home at this time that they were coming around to read the meter every so often, and to alleviate this problem, they wanted to put in this electronic meter that could read from outside the house. So okay, that's fine. I made the arrangements, and when they came, not only did I have my XD on my hip, but I also had my bodyguard in my pocket. I don't like people coming into my home that I don't know. It just makes me feel a little uncomfortable, and in that situation, it was one of those things where better safe than sorry, and just have the gun. I didn't need it, obviously. The guys were really nice, but you don't know that ahead of time. It could have turned out just like this, or substitute the water guys for delivery drivers, or some guy that I talked to on Craigslist to come buy something. But great reason to make sure that you carry a gun anytime you have someone coming to your house looking to purchase something. I mean, you don't have to walk around open carrying or anything like that, but it's wise to have a pistol on you just in case things go down in this particular manner. So there is news item number 3, and I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm not really concerned about how long this podcast gets. So let's roll right into news item number 4. For the last news item, I have something that you have undoubtedly heard already, but I just kind of wanted to talk about it just in case maybe you were living under a rock and you didn't hear about this. It was all over all the pro-gun blogs. It was over a variety of news websites and news feeds and things like that, and it's kind of a touching story in a sense. And this was sent to me by Justin? I believe it's Justin. I probably got your name wrong, and I'm horrible with names. Herf Doctor. I think it's Justin. Justin, if I got your name wrong, I'm sorry. But I'm really bad with names. But anyway, Justin sent me this news link and says, hey, you should talk about this on your show if you haven't already, or if you hadn't planned on already. I had read a news article, but he sent me a video link on Yahoo. And it was a news piece on an Oklahoma mother, an 18-year-old woman. She's at home alone with her 3-month-old daughter, and someone tries to break in. Now, apparently, he had stopped by the house earlier on and tried to talk his way in. She wouldn't allow him to do it, and I think he used the excuse of he knew her husband, or he wanted to pay his respects or something. Her husband, the baby's father, died on Christmas Day from cancer. And the speculation is that this guy wanted the drugs that her husband was on during his cancer treatment. And his first attempt was to try to talk his way in. After that didn't work and she didn't let him in, he came around again trying to break into the house. She was home alone with her 3-month-old baby. And as they're trying to break into the house, she picks up the phone, she calls 911, she starts talking to the dispatcher and explains the situation. She needs a patrol car out. And she says, I've got the shotgun, I've got the pistol, and can I shoot this guy when he comes through the door? She put a bottle in the baby's mouth to keep it quiet. I don't know whether it was a him or a her. I think it was a he, but I think it was a baby boy. But kind of neither here nor there. But anyway, the dispatcher tells her, I can't tell you to do that. However, you do what you have to do to protect your baby. The guy finally gets in, and he's got a 12-inch hunting knife. She shoots him with the shotgun. He's blasted away. He's dead. The other guy runs off and later turns himself into police. And it's incredible what this woman had done to protect herself and to be aware of everything. She got the shotgun. She got a backup pistol in case the shotgun didn't work. It looked like a double barrel, so if she ran out of rounds, she had the pistol. She put a bottle in the baby's mouth so that he kept quiet and maybe the intruders wouldn't be aware of him. She positioned herself so that when that guy came through the door, the shotgun was the first thing that he saw. She had the presence of mind to call the dispatcher to explain the situation. They play part of the tape throughout the newscast, and she sounds very calm and like she's aware of the situation and how grave it is, but she's not panicking. Guy gets in, she shoots them, and she did what she had to do to keep her baby safe. And I really commend her for that, for knowing what to do, for being capable of protecting her child, especially in the situation that she was in. Her husband dying just a couple of weeks earlier. This whole situation is just really, really bad to begin with, and then you've got these two lowlifes trying to break in and take advantage of her in a time like this. And the one got what he deserved. The other one, I hope he's in prison for a long time. But check out the video. It doesn't look like Yahoo's going to allow me to embed it, so you'll have to click through the link and check it out on the show notes, and watch the video. It's I don't know. I don't know how to put it. It's kind of humbling, and it just kind of makes you proud of this young girl for doing what she did to keep her baby safe. As a parent, that really that kind of touches me. It that really, really means something to me. At this point in the show, it is time for featured content. Now, much like the news, this is stuff that I came across on the web and found interesting. However, different than the way I do the news, I'm not going to read you all of the stuff in the featured content article, or play the podcast, or show the video or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about what I found really cool and urge you to go check it out for yourself. That is the whole premise of this featured content thing. It's just to kind of maybe open your eyes to some new and interesting content that you may not have stumbled onto on your own. Now, the first piece of featured content that I have is a meme that I participated in on January 8th, and that is "Do More Than Just Light a Candle" from Weirdbeard of Weird World. It's kind of weird referring to people by their call signs or their handles. It just seems weird to me, but at any rate, Weirdbeard was talking about this candlelight vigil that the Brady campaign was promoting. The objective was the objective of the Brady campaign candlelight vigil was to get people to come out all across the country, gather in groups, and honor victims of gun violence. And in addition to honoring victims of gun violence, they wanted to spread the word of preventing gun violence. And that kind of irked me a little bit. It's gun violence is a term that I don't personally think makes a whole lot of sense. It's sort of taking a subcategory of violence and just kind of specializing on it, or focusing on it. I mean, by the same token, in addition to gun violence, you should have other things like car violence, knife violence, bar of soap and a tube sock violence. I mean, if you can create a subcategory for this one type of violence, then you can do it for a variety of other things. And personally, I think it's kind of unnecessary. What Weirdbeard wanted to do was to strip away that gun violence thing and look at, spreading the word that you don't have to be a victim. A candle is nothing. It's not going to stop an attack. And the objective here was to take a photo of a lit candle with what you use to protect yourself, what you use to not become a victim. And in the case of a pro-gun blog, it was guns. And I thought, I really like this message. I like where he's going with it, and I'm going to participate. So I took a picture of a candle, little tea candle, and I framed it in such a way that the candle was in focus and bright, but I darkened the room and played with the aperture and flash settings on my camera so that in the background, in the dimness of the dark, there's a Springfield XD and a magazine full of Hornady FT for personal defense, FPD ammunition beside it. And there were a ton of other people that participated in this, and it wound up getting a really, really good turnout. And in addition to just the photos, there were people that put together really interesting blog posts. Miguel over at Gun Free Zone put something very heartfelt and what I thought was just a very, very well done piece of writing. honoring the, you know, victims, just victims, not gun violence victims, but, you know, honest to God victims. And well, not to say that gun violence victims aren't honest victims, but you'd have to go read Miguel's post to understand kind of what I'm getting at here, because I'm having a very difficult time putting it into words. You have to check it out for yourself. But at any rate, this thing, it generated a lot of photos and a lot of posts and a lot of people coming together. And in addition, it also caught the eye of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, which I thought was atrocious. They posted on their Facebook page something along the lines of, you know, these people think that this is funny. Nowhere in the original post, this on Weird World, did he say any of this was amusing. If you start reading through the comments, no one said that this whole thing was funny and we are mocking the Brady Candlelight Vigil, or the Brady campaign Candlelight Vigil. No one was mocking it. You know, we were just kind of interpreting it our own way. And you know, there was an IDPA video put together, an IDPA stage simulating the sort of a candlelight vigil, but it was supposed to mimic something similar to the Arizona shooting that happened, that just happened to be on the 1-year anniversary of this Brady campaign candlelight thing. And it's generated a lot of buzz. It's really interesting. There's some fantastic articles, some really cool pictures. There are a lot of people that did a great job with taking pictures of candles and guns and knives and flashlights and just kind of everyday carry gear. It's really interesting, and I would definitely urge you to check it out. If you do, however, you're going to find a ton of stuff to click on. There are a handful of links in the original article, and if you start going through the comments, there's 115 comments on this particular blog post. Many of them contain a link to another blog post which contains their photo and their story. So the reach of this thing went out pretty wide. I was really impressed by how far out it got, and you know, I thought it was really interesting and most definitely worth the time to sit down and read. So I would urge you to head over to Weird World and check out Do More Than Just Light a Candle. And if you go to his homepage, you'll see a couple of other things listed on there where he talks about the CSGV reaction and some other stuff. So definitely head over to Weird World and check it out. For the second piece of featured content, I have something that doesn't quite fit the description of what I consider to be featured content. However, I wanted to talk about this, but I didn't want to make it a discussion topic at the end of the episode, and because for one, I don't think I could talk about it at length, but it was just something I wanted to put out there anyway. And the piece of featured content is the television show Hot Shots on NBC Sports, which was formerly Versus. I'm not quite sure if your television provider carries Versus or whether it's more of a Comcast thing, but I watched the first episode on Sunday morning. It came on something like 9 Eastern, and the show is pretty interesting. It follows 4 different competitive shooters or exhibition shooters. I guess you should call them professional shooters. Jerry Michalek was one of them. And here's the part where I'm really going to botch this because I don't know any of the other people's names. There is another pistol shooter. There is the Mossberg exhibition shooter. And, you know, I feel really bad for not researching this and gathering their names. And the last person was an archery guy. And they followed these 4 professional shooters, and they kind of went through their training routine a little bit. And Jerry Michalek and the other pistol shooter were preparing for the Steel Challenge match in California, I believe, and they were kind of going through their routines, you know, how they warm up, how they get in tune, how they practice. They were setting up stages and shooting them and things like that. The archery shooter, we didn't see a whole lot from him because he was driving from his home to an event 12 hours away, and there was a lot of talk of how he was concerned about being able to, whether or not he would be able to perform properly at the end of a 12-hour drive. And the the shotgun exhibition shooter for Mossberg was, he was at the gym showing how he prepares for the exertion of throwing clay birds way up into the air and handling the shotgun and managing recoil with the shotgun not on his shoulder but down towards his hip. And it was pretty interesting. I found the Jerry Miculek stuff the most interesting because I like watching him. I've seen him countless times on Shooting USA and Downrange TV and things like that. And I've kind of grown to really like him and his style. And I think he's an amazing revolver shooter. But the show, the only knock against the show, personally, I think it was way too short. It was in a half-an-hour time slot, so when you subtract all the commercials that they air during the show, you're looking at 20-something minutes for the show, and it just wasn't enough. It didn't satisfy. I didn't feel satisfied at all when it was over. It was just kind of like, hey, there should be more here. It should be in a 1-hour time slot. We should see a bit more. It just felt a little rushed, a little, like it could have used a bit more substance, and spreading out the time frame I think would have done that. If you head over to the Hot Shots website, everything is kind of blank. You can click on the videos link, and there is a breakdown of all the different episodes that they're going to be airing. However, there's no video associated with them. All of them are sort of linked to the Hot Shots promo that they've been showing for the last couple of months. I don't know whether or not in the next couple of weeks we'll start seeing videos populate these episodes, kind of like a commercial for it. I really doubt that they'll show the entire episode. It seems like Outdoor Channel, Sportsman's Channel, and NBC Sports are not going to do, what History Channel and other channels do, where they provide the entire show, the show in its entirety. I really doubt that they'll do that. But as someone that enjoys competitive shooting, I was really into this. I thought it was interesting. I just thought it was too short. So if you're interested in competitive shooting, check out Hot Shots on NBC Sports. I believe it's going to air on Sundays at 9 a.m. Eastern. And you'll have to check your local listings for what channel NBC Sports is, because I really have no idea. It's like 70 something here in Pennsylvania, or here in the Berks County area on Comcast. Whether or not that helps you, I really have no idea. So check out Hot Shots on NBC Sports. The last piece of featured content that I have is a blog that is completely new to me. I wound up stumbling onto it as a result of the Weird Beard post on the Candlelight Vigil, and I started poking through it a little bit, and I read this one particular post, and I just thought it was done really, really well. Kind of like knock it out of the park well. The blog is A Girl and Her Gun, and the blog post that I'm most impressed with is entitled "An Open Letter to the Anti-Gun Folks." This was published today, January 9th. And if you read through this blog post, it's really interesting. She gives you a little bit of, she sheds a little light on who she is, and she talks about the gun culture and what it means to her. She leads off by saying that her and her husband were in the process of adopting a little girl from China, and along the way she began to get into kind of the adoption circle, if you will, and the adoption community, and she enjoyed it. It was important to her. But eventually she moved on. She sort of left this circle and went into a church-going circle. And the religion circle was important to her, and she enjoyed it very much. But she sort of drifted out of that circle and into something else. And she makes a point that along the way, everyone seems to have their own agenda, whether it's a power struggle thing, or they're trying to promote something, whatever the case may be. All of these different groups that she had been a part of throughout the years seemed to have an agenda about them, and eventually she stumbled onto the gun culture. And in her younger years, she was afraid of firearms, and eventually she sort of warmed up to them, and she became a gun owner herself. And she talks about the gun community as a whole, and she's very fond of it, and how it was very different from everything else, because everyone was honest with her. It wasn't always what she wanted to hear, but people were honest. They never asked anything of her, and they were always willing to give her information. And and she talks about how much that meant to her and how it makes her feel as though she's a part of a large group that, you know, that doesn't have an agenda, so to speak. They're, you know, they're open, they're forthcoming, forthgiving. I don't know how you, what word I'm searching for here, but they, you know, they freely give out information to anyone that's interested in learning more about firearms and the community itself. And she puts it into this article that is just really well done. You know, when you read certain blog posts, there's always a feel to them. Some blog posts have an educational feel to them. You read them and, you know, it's sort of like a technical manual, sort of. You know, you don't get that bond with the author. You just feel as though you're being presented with information. It's not a bad writing style, but it's a writing style that presents information. Then there's others that have like a touch of humility to them, and then you've got other types of writing that really, I don't know, they make you feel as though you're bonding with the author. You're reading through and you're relating their writing to yourself, and you just kind of feel touched by the writing. And that is the type of writing that this blog post is. You know, I felt kind of like I was drawn in and was there with her as she's talking about the gun culture and moving through her view of firearms and not to sound like a broken record, but the gun culture as a whole. Really, really well written. Really impressive stuff. I thought it was tremendously well done. It is very, very pro-gun, and even if you're on the if you're on the fence, or you know someone that's on the fence about guns, have them read this article. It's really heartfelt, and just, again, not to sound like a broken record, but it's just tremendously well done. Very, very good job. So head over to A Girl and Her Gun and read An Open Letter to the Anti-Gun Folks. Well, it is time for one of my favorite parts of the episode, and that is the cigar and drink pairing. It allows me to combine two passions, one being firearms and the other being cigars. I've been involved with cigars for 5 or 6 years. With a cigar review blog alone, I've been into cigars a little bit longer than that. But, you know, I enjoy cigars. I enjoy cigars at the range. I enjoy cigars while I'm sitting down here in my office, you know, leafing through a variety of pro-gun blogs and new gun-related news articles. And, you know, I just thought it was a sort of fitting thing to incorporate into my gun podcast. Sort of a niche, if you will. The Unnamed Trucker's got his restaurant reviews. I believe Jason from Empty Mags was talking about doing some bourbon tastings. You know, everyone's sort of got their own little side niche, and cigars is mine. So, I don't want to ramble on too much about the beverage. I've covered it before. I'm not quite sure when, but for a series of episodes, I think I talked about Caribou Coffee, and that's what I'm pairing with the cigar this evening. It's simple Caribou blend coffee from Caribou Coffee for my Keurig machine, just a little K-cup. And if you want to know more about it, you can read a little bit more about it, because I don't know much about it. It's just black coffee. It's decent coffee, but nothing to write home about. The cigar, on the other hand, is the Lito Gomez Diaz SB4, which is a small batch. And these cigars are what is called a puro, or a puro. And what that means is the cigar is made up of all tobacco from one region. So for instance, something like the popular Camacho line uses all Honduran tobacco. This particular cigar uses all Dominican tobacco. Fuente cigars use all Dominican tobacco. But what makes it a little more interesting is that all of the tobacco in the cigar comes from the Lito Gomez farms, the La Flor Dominicana farms in the Dominican Republic. So not only is it a puro in the sense of region for tobacco, it's shrunk down even smaller than that, and all of the tobacco in the cigar came from a single farm, which is very difficult to do because a lot of growers don't grow their own wrapper leaves because it's a very expensive process and the yield isn't very high. So it's easier to grow tobacco for binder and fillers. and a lot of these companies buy out wrapper leaves from people that specialize in growing wrapper tobacco. For this particular cigar, they were using wrapper leaf that was grown on the fields, and they found it to be tremendously difficult, but they were very happy with the result because they were able to fine-tune quality and things like that. The cigar, this particular cigar, I believe is the Lusitano, which is a 54 by 6. As I said, all the tobacco in this cigar was grown on the La Flor Dominicana farm, and the price, which may shock you a little bit, it shocked me a bit when I saw it, is $17.95 MSRP without tax. So depending on what state you're purchasing these from, the price could go up. So it's an expensive cigar, but it's a very good cigar. Lido Gomez Diaz is La Flor Dominicana. Lido Gomez is the guy in the hat, rides the horse in the ads and things like that. And this is sort of his small batch, his little specialty stuff that they do in addition to La Flor Dominicana. Now, these cigar, a lot of the La Flor Dominicana product is very full-bodied, powerful stuff. This is even more so. So if you're a fan of, say, the La Flor Dominicana Double Ajero, if you're a fan of the Fuente Opus X or the Cane line from Oliva, you know, this type of cigar will be for you. It's very bold, it's very full-bodied. It is the type of cigar that you wouldn't want to smoke earlier on in the day or smoke before you've had something to eat, because chances are very good you may turn a little green if you're not accustomed to the power that comes out of these cigars. They're available in a handful of sizes. I didn't spend a whole lot of time looking up what sizes were available. This isn't something I can get locally. I got it from Buckhead Cigar down in Atlanta, and so far it's going really well. It's not what I would consider a finesse cigar. There's a lot of power behind it, and it's been very straightforward throughout. It's got sort of a woody core flavor. It has sort of raisin-esque sort of flavors in the finish. Maybe a little bit of nutty flavors here and there. It's not overly complex. It's not a real dynamic cigar. When you light it up, it's powerful. You get these flavors that come through, and all the way through I've been getting the same thing. There's no transition. It doesn't build in body. It's been very consistent. Some people would call that too one-dimensional for their tastes. Generally, I like a cigar that has some twists and turns in it, and, you know, gives you some surprises. You know, flavor levels changing, flavor intensities changing, body going up and down, finish changing, things like that. I like a lot of variety in the cigar that I'm smoking. I think it's kind of like the cigar is taking you on a journey. In this case, you're heading down a path and you're not veering from that path. It's, you know, it's a straight shot from start to finish. Like most cigars that have a lot of Ligero in them, I'm having a little bit of difficulty keeping it lit. I've had to touch it up probably 5 or 6 times at this point. I'm doing a lot of talking and less smoking, but as far as the construction goes, maybe if I were puffing on it a bit more, I wouldn't have so many issues with it requiring touch-ups. Even so, the burn line is thin and even. The ash holds on fairly well. It's a nice pale gray color. Has a nice compacted shape. It's not making a mess or anything like that. Smoke volume is good. It's dense, coats the palate. It's got a creamy kind of a finish to it. All in all, good solid cigar. I don't know that I'd willingly spend $18 on it. It's out of my comfort zone by several dollars. A lot of several dollars, but it's a good solid cigar nonetheless. And it's something I certainly wouldn't mind having on hand for the odd occasion when I was looking for something really powerful. And that's going to be it. I don't want to get too long on this cigar and drink pairing because the podcast as a whole is getting really, really long. So with that said, if you're interested in trying the Lido Gomez Diaz SB4, I would recommend contacting my preferred retailer, which is Buckhead Cigars in Atlanta, Georgia. You can do so in a variety of ways. If you want to call up Mike and talk to him about pricing or anything he's got in the shop, you can do so at 404-844-0400. If you're not interested in the Lido Gomez Diaz, but you are interested in buying something from Mike, he has a website, askthecigarguys.com. It's not an e-commerce site where you can order things, but it does list all of the things that Mike has for sale in the shop. If you just want to shoot Mike a quick message, you can do so on Twitter at Buckhead Cigar. He's also on Facebook and Google Plus as Buckhead Cigar. So that's going to close out the cigar and drink pairing for the episode. Well, it is time for the discussion part of the podcast where I talk about something that's been on my mind. And I did something that I've never done before in the podcast, and that is I recorded this bit ahead of time. A few days ago, I did some stuff that you're going to hear about in just a few seconds. And while it was fresh in my mind, I decided to sit down and turn the camera on one morning while the house was quiet and record this bit. So, check it out. Alright, well, for the first time ever during my podcast, I decided to turn on the camera and record the discussion topic out of sequence. It's probably a few days earlier than I'll be recording the rest of the podcast, but since the topic I wanted to talk about was fresh in my mind now, I thought, it only makes sense to just sit down while the house is quiet and I don't have anything better to do, turn on the camera and just talk a little bit. So, with that said, let's kind of flash back to last week. I talked about my Beretta 70S and how I was in deep thought on what I wanted to do with it. I didn't know whether I wanted to keep it, sell it, or invest a little bit more money in it to have it plated and then just have a pretty dust collector or what. I really had no idea what I wanted to do with this. I produced the podcast. It goes out. Some people read it, or some people listen to it, some people watch the podcast, watch the video portion, and the comments start coming in. I got a couple via email, a couple through Facebook, a couple through the blog itself, and it was some really great stuff. It's probably one of the most, discussed podcasts that I've done to date, and it had a real great conversational feel to it in terms of the feedback that I was receiving. I had some people telling me that, I was right to want to hoard the gun. You should never give up a gun, and it's kind of nice to have that sentimental piece of your first pistol still around. It's okay to sell a gun every now and again, in between your first purchase and your last purchase, but that first purchase is something kind of special, and you should keep that. And then there were others that were saying that it would be really cool to have a plated gun, but at the same time, are you going to use it at that point? And the answer was really, honestly, no. It would just be a pretty dust collector at that point. And then there were others that were telling me, you should sell it and then take the money that you get from selling it and invest it into something that you will use. And I had a lot to think about. What did I want to do, and how soon did I want to go about doing it? Well, I decided on Wednesday that I was going to go over to the gun shop with my Beretta 70S and see just what they were willing to give me for it. Now, I had no illusions that it was going to be a high-dollar gun. Justin on Facebook was able to help me out with some gun values, and I was able to get a general idea of where I felt the gun was worth. And I was thinking along the lines of $200 to $300 in this range is what I would expect to maybe get for it, and then in turn have the gun shop mark it up and resell it. So I packed up the gun. I head over to the gun shop. I walk through the door. Hi, how you doing? I have this gun. I'm considering selling it, and I want to get an idea of what it's worth so that I can invest in something else. And the guy says, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to do that for you. However, he said, the owner's not here. What I can do for you is I can call him, see what he says, and let you know. I thought, wow, this is kind of weird, but okay, yeah, sure, go ahead. So he takes my gun toward the back, he picks up the phone, and as he's turning the corner out of sight, I can hear him on the phone with the owner. He's describing the gun that he's got there, the model, what it's chambered in, and I don't know. He's out of sight and around the corner for maybe a minute and a half, and then he comes back, and he says, "Well, before he left, he says, this is how we generally do things. What is the least you're willing to take for the gun?" And I thought, wow, that's kind of strange that the bare minimum that I'm willing to take for the gun is where we're going to start, and then I'm expecting we're going to go down from there. So I told him $300 that I think is, I don't know, maybe fair. There's some wiggle room in there, but, let's go with $300 to start. So off he goes around the corner, and then he comes back and says, well, if it were chambered in 22, he said, yeah, the owner wouldn't mind paying you $300 at all. He said, however, the 380 is a little more common, which I thought was backwards. I thought the 380 was more common, or was less common. However, he says, you know, we'd be comfortable giving you $175 for it. He was off the phone at this point, and he had no real negotiating power. So it was kind of confusing. It was like, okay, here's what we can offer, and that's it. You know, there's no negotiating. This is what we're willing to give you for it, and you know, that was it. And I'm thinking, wow, this is kind of weird, because the number in my head is 200. If he's willing to give me 200 for the gun, I'm going to take the 200 and I'm going to invest it in the Glock 17, the brand new Gen 4 Glock 17 in the counter, pretty much below my gun on the counter, for $550. And you know, I'm kind of debating. I'm like, well, you know, are you willing to give me more if I reinvest in something here in the shop? You know, will you give me more in trade rather than cash? He says, oh no, you know, our prices are all the same. It's all considered cash. So, you know, I'm thinking hard about it. You know, 175, it's not much lower than my number of 200, but you know, his offer is a little bit low and the gun price is a little high. So you know, little low here, a little high there, ends up just too much out of pocket. So I told him, hey, you know, I really appreciate your time, thank you. However, you know, I want to think about it a little bit. So I pick up the gun, you know, thank him for his time, and say, you know, have a good evening, and out I went. So I get back in the car, and I'm really debating at this point. I'm thinking, you know, maybe I should just go back in there and take the 175 and put it towards the new Gen 4 Glock. You know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go home. I'll think about it a little bit, and that'll be that. So I get home, and I'm talking to my wife about it, and she says, oh, you know, it's only $25. And then I explained the situation. She said, oh, okay, I kind of understand. And then I thought, you know what, maybe I should run down to another shop where I bought my bodyguard. It's a little further away. I don't know that they deal in used guns all that frequently, but you know, it's worth a shot. So I get in the car and I head down to another shop. So I get there, and I pretty much the same thing transpires. I hand them the gun. I tell them that I'm interested in purchasing another gun. You know, I want to see what they'd be willing to give me for this old Beretta. So he gets out the blue book of gun values, which is like this thick, plops it on the counter, and starts leafing through it to find the gun. And he finds the gun, and he says, you know, we'd be willing to give you $160 for it. It's in about 70% condition. I'm thinking, well, you know, I thought it was in pretty decent shape. You know, where are you getting the 70% from? He says, you know, there's a little nick at the base of the magazine here. And he said, you have some rust issues here. Well, the rust issue was in a screw. What I would imagine happened is when I bought the gun, there was some rust in the screw, but I didn't really think much of it. I thought, well, you know, I'll just go to the hardware store and replace the screw. Well, you know, as I come to find out, you know, screws inside of a firearm aren't just a matter of running down to the hardware store and picking up a new screw. The previous owner must have tried to use a screwdriver that was too small, and they slipped the slotted screwdriver down onto the screw and tried to turn it. Only the screwdriver just gouged the hell out of the top of the screw, or the face of the screw. And, you know, it started to rust a little bit. And, you know, for all these years that, I shouldn't say all these years, the few years that I've had it, I've never really worried about it. In the back of my mind, I just thought, oh, you know, at some point maybe I'll just order another screw. So he kind of beat me up about that, and you know, I'm thinking, you know, now we're $40 under my price instead of $25. However, they've got a brand new Gen 3 Glock 17 for $479 in the case. And he's telling me, you know, I'm sorry, we would like to offer you more. However, you know, we don't do a lot of used gun stuff here. And he said, and to be fair, he says, even if you took it somewhere else and got a higher number, he said, you know, our gun prices are probably lower than theirs. And he was right. He was right on the money there, which was kind of funny. But the premise was basically that they were going to charge about $250 for it, and they were probably willing to come down to about $225 if someone haggled with them. And that seemed fair. You know, I think I paid about $250 for that gun. I think after, you know, like a box of ammo, taxes, and transfer, I was at about $300 back when I bought it. So I wasn't too upset about taking the 160 because, you know, his pricing was like 70 some dollars, or about $70 less than the other shop on the new Glock. Now, it wasn't a Gen 4, which I wasn't quite sure whether or not I liked. Initially, I was looking at a Gen 4. If I were going to buy new, I was looking at a Gen 4 because it's the newer model, and they come with 3 magazines. Well, it seems as though they come with 3 magazines to make up for some of the headache that they received earlier on with problems with their recoil spring. And, you know, I didn't know if I'd wind up with something that's been sitting in a gun store and needed to have the recoil swing swapped out. And when it comes to Glock parts, it seems as though Gen 3 Glock parts are in abundance. And some of the parts for the Gen 4 stuff you need to look a little harder for. So, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you know what, I was going to buy a Gen 3 Glock 17 anyway. I was looking for one used. Here's one new. They're willing to give me $160 off of the price for in trade for my gun. You know what, I'm going to take it. So, I picked up a brand new Gen 3 Glock 17 in exchange, well, in exchange for my Beretta plus $320 or so. And it's nothing fancy. It's nothing fancy in the sense that it doesn't come in this big shiny box. It's fairly simple. It's really small. It's kind of cute. It's like lunch pail-ish size. All of the other guns that I have that come in a hard plastic case are monsters compared to this one. My Smith & Wesson M&P case is probably a good 6 inches larger than this. My wife's Beretta Neos case is probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches wider than this, but it's shorter height-wise. And my XD case is a monster compared to this. So this little like lunch pail cute kind of case was kind of funny, but it was nice to finally pick up that Glock that I've been looking for. There's really nothing to it. I'm sure you've seen a Glock before. You know, they're very simplistic, simple little guns. Gun hasn't even been fired yet at this point, but I'm really looking to taking it out to the range and giving it a try. The only issue, I didn't notice until after I got home and started playing with it. The only thing I'm not real crazy about is where the mag release lever is, the magazine release. I can't really reach it. When I get a good firing grip on the gun and I release it with my weak hand, which would then go for a magazine on my belt, I can't reach the mag release without changing my grip and rotating the gun slightly in my hand. In which case I can reach it, but it's low profile, which is nice because it doesn't dig into your hand or anything. However, it takes a good firm push, and I'm not quite sure that I'm going to be able to operate that as well as I would like in a competitive shooting situation. I think I may end up fumbling with it a little bit. So it might be worth looking at an extended mag release. And from what I understand, they're a real breeze to install. It's, you know, the whole gun is pretty simplistic, so it shouldn't be an issue to install a new mag release or anything. So I'll have to look into that. And while I was there, I picked up 3 Glock magazines. They were a little bit more expensive than I would have liked, but genuine Glock parts, and well, you know, with the gun store markup, they came about $25 a piece. I bought those after the fact, right before I was leaving. I thought, you know what, I'll see if they have any Glock magazines. So I picked up 3. He gave me all 3 for $75. I didn't have to pay sales tax or anything like that, which was a little nice after the big hit on the Glock. So I'm officially part of the dark side, I guess you can say. Really looking forward to giving it a try. You know, I was kind of playing around with it, just kind of pressing out and looking down the sights. My wrist needs a little bit of adjustment from transitioning from the Smith & Wesson M&P to the Glock 17. It's nothing that I think is going to give me too much trouble. Give me 2 or 3 dry fire practice sessions, and I think I'll have that issue worked out. I'm not quite sure how easy it will be transitioning from one gun to the other in the event that one goes down and I need a backup gun, but I'm really looking forward to trying it. I want to get over the range, but I don't have a holster and I don't have mag pouches, so those are one of the things that I'm going to need to purchase yet. Once they're purchased, I'm like ready to go for production division USPSA, and all it cost me was an old gun that I wasn't using, $320 for a brand new Glock 17 plus that gun, and then another $75 for magazines. So I've exhausted all of my Christmas money, but I'm really happy with the purchase and I can't wait to give it a try. So that more or less is the discussion topic for the episode. Well, with the discussion topic over, it's about time to close out episode 23 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltNPA.com. I want to thank you for checking out this episode. I apologize for how long it wound up being, but I don't know, when you're in a good mood, you just don't care how long you sit in front of the camera and talk, and that was the case tonight. I was in a good mood when I sat down and recorded the discussion topic. It got a little bit longer than usual, and then I had some interesting news I wanted to talk about, and I don't know, I just was in a gabby mood, and we wound up, I don't know, an hour and 12 minutes or so, but I think it turned out pretty good. I'm happy with it. So, if you're interested in getting in touch with me, you heard something on this podcast, you'd like to comment on it, you think there's something you would like me to talk about, you want to get my opinion about anything, you can do so in a variety of ways. You can send me an email. My email address is walt@waltnpa.com. You can send text, you can send an audio file to be included in a future podcast, you can send a video response if you'd like, and I'll do my best to get it incorporated into the show if that's what you'd like. If you just like it to have a private conversation, that's fine too. You can also use the Gun Rights Radio Network forum. I have a Shooting the Breeze section in there where I post a new topic for each episode, and all conversation and talk is welcome there. I'm on Twitter as @WaltW. I'm on Facebook and Google Plus as Walt White, and I think that is plenty of ways to talk to me if you feel so inclined. So with that said, again, I want to thank you for listening to or watching episode 23 of Shooting the Breeze, and until next time, I will catch you later. I did it again. I botched the ending. I really need to come up with a catchy way to end the podcast in a clever manner instead of just, I'll catch you later. I don't like it. And I'm not editing out this part either.
You can hear Gun Rights Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. Gun Rights Radio Network shows can be found under Sources.